everybody seems to be doing it. And there's, you guys just don't know, and there was so much bad advice going about. It was also the time when, regrettably, education changed, and we had whole ecosystems of further education and people getting grants. And then suddenly that changed, and you had to start doing vocational courses and things, and nobody wants to do those, particularly at our age. You just want to go and enjoy ourselves. And we'll start bringing some of that glaze over. Let's get rid of that ultramarine going in here. I can see it. But start to cool down our sheep a little bit here as well. A bit of modelling on the sheep down the middle of his face there, perhaps. I'll drag that through now a bit. Certainly strong down there. So we're starting to get the effect of light coming through. Start loose, gradually tighten up. I'm the one that's in control, and I'm the one that's can say when it stops, when it starts. And as this gradually dries, I can add more and more as a standard watercolour. I've got to go dark enough. I mustn't be tempted to paint it as a normal watercolour, because the pastel won't show. Although I can go darker with the pastel as well, it's not going to. Don't be afraid to experiment. If I show you this technique, later on, go and have a play with your pastels and just see what you can do with them. If it gets overworked, you can always work over with more pastel still. Okay, let's take our break then, shall we? And we'll come back into this in a minute with the pastels. And you'll be surprised that it'll suddenly bring it out. That'll be all right?
Yeah.
That's another problem. When I paint, I tend to paint like a sword fencer. Long brushes, and I reach out. Not the watercolour so much, but I paint from a distance because I'm painting broken colour most of the time. So therefore I need to be able to get back from the painting to see it. Here I'm working across and I can't see what I'm doing. This is why I'm using hot press paper now, is because I wanted a smoother surface paper. Normally I'd use a rough on a snow scene, but because of the sheep I didn't want that. I like to really look for colours and pull them out of it. We were just talking, one of the gentlemen just now was saying to me about skies. When you're taking photographs, you tend to find that the sky will either be too bright and then it'll bleach out, which is the usual one, and you see the landscape, or you focus on the sky and it's all right, and then the landscape's too dark. So it's usually wise to try and take 2 photographs every time you take a shot if you're going to paint from it, because you want to focus the light meter on the sky and get a good sky, and then go down and get the land as well, and perhaps take one of both. When I'm teaching, I usually find that I'm dealing with 3 problems. The first one is that they were told at primary school they were no good, and it stays with you forever. The next one is you've got an older brother or sister who's better than you. And the third one that's the most difficult for me as a teacher is you've got an idea about what good art is. And it may be that that's not you naturally. So you might want to paint photorealism, and you might be naturally an impressionist or the other way around. It isn't for me as a teacher to change you. It is for me to try with experience and help you, guide out of you who you naturally are and will really enjoy. But anybody who comes to me and wants to paint a certain way, I'll help them do it. Doesn't matter what it is. I don't ask people to paint like me. I'm just showing you ways here. This isn't how to paint. This is just other ways of painting. This is just to help you enjoy. I paint in all sorts of different ways. You see what I mean about the watercolour and the lights and darks now, that you can play backwards and forwards, and now the washes that I did, the stronger they were, the more my pastel would show. Now, if I had a rough paper, you could imagine the texture I'd be getting with the snow now. Yeah? So the watercolour was only a foundation. It was only to get rid of the paper, which is what I do when I'm doing the acrylic ink ones of gardens. It just loses the... Is it looking reasonable back there? It's sort of starting to work? You get the idea, good. I hope that, when I get so involved with it, I hope you see I'm enjoying doing this, because there's absolutely no point in painting if you're not going to enjoy it. Don't struggle too much. If I'm doing a demo, I'm always exploring. I hate to do the same thing over and over again. I always try to differ what I do slightly every time I do it, because otherwise I'd get bored. Dots and dashes. Feel the marks you're making. You're looking at a surface, and it goes through your eyes, through the brain, out to the fingertips. So your fingertips should be feeling the surface that you're touching. It doesn't matter how good a drawing you do. If you draw a tram line on an object, it'll be flat. The edge of what you're drawing must be about the edge of the object you're drawing. So if it's a very broken old rusty tin can, it's got to be a broken line. If it's a smooth line gently going around a glass, it's a smooth line. And that will give you form even before you start shading. It's a little bit the same here. I'm not copying the marks exactly. I'm making them about what's going on here. And if I wanted to be exact, I could be. Of course, you know I could be. That's not what I'm aiming to do. I just wanted to get the atmosphere and feeling of this thing. Yeah, you don't ask many questions this group, do you? Spellbound what I'm doing. I'm just going to go back a little bit and see what I've got there. Stay. Because I can't see from so close up. Yes, it needs... the darks need to be quite a bit darker in places to really bring this out. But the idea tonight, as I say, is to give you the idea of how it works. You can see how this could work for you. And it's not just with this method. You can use this method just the same for doing landscapes and things, because you can put those lights back in. You can put in a lovely big sky with sides of pastels, you know, painted all in loose. So if you've got those old watercolours at home that haven't worked, then please don't be afraid to now have a go at them and go back on them. And I want this shimmering effect of light coming through. And by going so loosely, I can now tighten up more and more and more as much as I wish to. I'm again one that's in control.
For your own paintings, do you prefer studio or on-site? I suppose it depends where it is.
It depends what you're doing as well, but I think you learn more and get more by painting from life. There's nothing like being out there on a wonderful day, and even on a bad day. One of the most fun times I had was in a thunderstorm on one of the islands of the Hebrides. Again, you'll see it on the film. But I'm doing a water and pastel. And it just came down like a deluge. The river came, and I was actually I didn't need any water. I was just using the brush pastels and the rain pouring down on me, getting absolutely drowned. And it worked. It was great fun. You know, you just enjoy. I was doing a big pastel there working. Now you can paint pastels onto an acrylic ground as well. So if you paint your watercolour paper with an acrylic ground, that gives you a nice surface to work on. But don't use acrylic too thickly or it'll resist the pastel. So a dark ground's lovely to work on a watercolour paper. 3 hours in the freezing wind in the Hebrides. Yeah, but you feel you've achieved so much and you actually gain so much being there. Working from photographs when I have to. So for figures, for the flower gardens, for things like that, big abstract, for things like that, it's fun. But it's such a different way of painting. And of course, if you're there with a sheep, if I was actually painting this with a sheep there, I'd be getting a lot more out of it now, I'm sure. But equally, I'm treating it as if I were there. And I suppose that's one advantage I've got, and I've said this quite often, is that because I have painted so much from life, when I'm doing something like this, I've got the resource in my mind to come back on, to know if I'm, to paint it like I would out there, with that same sort of liveliness. And
I think one of the problems for us poor amateurs is that the light changes.
That's why you've got to get it done so quickly.
And shadows are changing.
You've only got 2.5 to 3 hours.
Yeah.
But using this method, you've seen what I've done in half an hour or so. And the same with the oil painting way that I've shown you. Yeah. Block in the backgrounds, get rid of the white, or use a coloured ground on your canvas to start, get rid of the white stuff. Constable used a deep umber ground, or a sienna. And if you look at some of his studies, you'll see the branches aren't painted in, the light's painted in, and the branches are left behind. Very, very rapid way of working, you see. And umber's a lovely colour to work on, as is sienna. Ochre is too. So maybe try that for a landscape sometime, fit in a brown and just leave your brown showing through and work it up that way. There's lots of rapid ways, and it's nice to paint light onto the dark as well. It's very nice to do that.
Do you ever finish any of your outdoor sketches back in the studio as well?
Yes. Now there are 2 I did last year. I did a triptych of the waltz where I painted it in the studio first from photographs and worked it up. And it was very dull. So then I went out there with the oils and finished it out there. Equally the other way around, there's one I did out there from the same spot just as a single canvas, and then the light changed before I could get into half an hour into it. And I had no choice, so I had to go home and use the photographs and really push the colours. even on the computer, to get myself there. So it works both ways. Yeah, it's good fun. Yeah. No, don't be limited. Just as it, keep your mind open, really. And try different things out. Yeah, there's no one right way, is there? There's so many ways that things can be done. I don't know how much more further I want to go, because I can keep fiddling with it. I quite like it loose and lively like that. And it's personal taste, isn't it? You might prefer it.
So does that picture have to be fixed now for the...
I don't. If you want to fix them, why bother with expensive fixative? Hairspray is perfectly good. Now, British Airways and USA Airways, when I went abroad once, they wouldn't let the oils on, they would the acrylics. They wouldn't let my fixative spray on, but they would ladies' hairspray. If you're travelling abroad, be careful about what you're taking. Ask the airlines beforehand, because you might get halfway with one lot of stuff and then the other airline will say you can't take it. If you mount something with a double mount, never have pastels on their front. If you want to carry them, put them between either newspaper or better still tracing paper for just storage. Providing you bash them well when you're finished and you never lay them on their front, they're always vertical on the back, you shouldn't have a problem of the stuff coming off. My problem is I've got so many pieces mounted in cellophane, and the cellophane bashes against it and people, bash them about, and of course it gradually messes up a mount, and they're quite expensive because I use proper acid-free card. So I don't know, the actual answer to that is no, I don't spray mine ever. And if I use water with it, I don't need to anyway. So, but there's not that much. There's not a bit of pastel on the floor there.
No.
It's for you. I was going to joke about that tonight and say, please turn all your phones off. Always one. It's worse than a funeral.
Because I'm chauffeur, isn't it?
But what I'm giving you is the choice. I'm showing you how it can be done. And how tightly you want to paint is up to you.
If you'd done that picture only in pastel, would it look a lot different to what it is now?
Yes. It would have a softer, I'm being quite harsh with it. If I was doing this just as a pastel, because there's so many ways of painting the pastel. If this was the traditional pastel technique, the other thing to watch as well is no paper is colour fast. So those pastel papers, if you want to leave the colour showing through, that's unwise. If you want to have colour showing through, give your paper, which is why watercolour paper is quite useful, give your paper a coat of paint that will be colour fast, like acrylic. In your lifetime it might not happen, but we've even used these expensive pastels and we've done tests in sunlight, leaving a piece of paper across, and even after 5 or 6 weeks we find there's a difference in colour in those. The best watercolours still, so they don't like sunlight. So my suggestion is that if you want to do a traditional pastel and have the colour showing through and leaving the colour showing through, it's dodgy using the pastel papers and leaving those showing through. You're better to coat it. Now you can stretch pastel paper just the same as watercolour paper, remember. If you want a really flat surface, you can't use water paint on it in the same way as you can with watercolour paper, but you can stretch it at least if you want it really flat. So the effect would be different because I would block and blend. I block in all my colours first and blend them, and then I work the pastels over the top. Pastel works by being a very fine pigment like watercolour, and the pigment reflects light. So if I put a bit of colour on like that, and I smudge it, it's dead. If I then go over the top, look how bright that is. That's reflecting the light and it's pure. So I deaden my first coats by blending them, and then I'll work up my succeeding coats by either scumbling or putting it directly on as I'm doing now and leaving them alone. Because if you touch them or blend them, they'll die. And that's the same with fixative. Fixative will take the whole painting down, the lights by 2 tones, which is not really very, if you've got highlights, you've lost them, haven't you? So I'm not very keen on fixative, you've asked me. I once painting a sunrise of Bridlington Harbour, and it was very, very orange, really bright, and I couldn't have more orange, more cadmium, more... And I suddenly, well, you prat, Pete, what are you doing? You know, instead of putting all the warms on, put the cooler on. Use the opposites, rough against smooth, light against dark, warm against cool. So I started plonking in these cools and suddenly the warms shot out at you. Make sure it's very often not the thing that you think is wrong in your painting that is wrong, it's something nearby. And you're busy trying to get this thing right, it won't go right, and it's not that, it's another colour there. If you wanted to paint a guy in a fluorescent jacket, you wouldn't paint fluorescent paint on. If you want to paint silver in a pot, you don't paint silver paint on. You paint the right colours one to another. If you want that fluorescent jacket, then you've got to put the opposites in the colour circle around it. So you're painting rape. I had somebody come to paint rape the other day. I said, I want a purple sky, please. What do you mean purple sky? I said, it's the opposite to the yellow. You see what happens. And we started to get purple in and around the landscape, and the rape just went pow, you know. You've got to use this colour chemistry, as I've been doing here, even with the warm and the warm and cool blues. And I'm using warm and cool blues. In fact, I'm using a little bit of green now as well into this, just to make those blues seem even bluer. But I used a bit of green on the sheep, green sheep. I was painting green cows in New Zealand for the kids. And it was, when you're using acrylic inks, you've got to keep them wet, because once acrylic ink's dry, that's it, you can't move them. You can lift watercolour out, but acrylic inks won't. And this green cow I was doing with all the dark colours, and you have to have a diffuser to spray to keep it wet. And of course, like you said, I'm working on the vertical, and one spray too much is all it needs, and the cow just went down here, and just repaint it in afterwards. So, do you think you've learned a bit tonight? Some ideas?
Yeah.
And as I say, you tell me what you want another time, and whatever it is, but painting knife or rollers. I made great fun recently using rollers for backgrounds, like that pheasant one. It was painted by using roller at first. Did a very soft background, and then sponging up, and then the brushes and gradually building up. Do you think I should add any more to it? What do you think?
Yeah.
Is that right? Is that about enough of me?
As good as it is.
Too dark bits there. Yeah, just a few little dark bits now, just to enhance that light against the dark. Go down to the sheep here. This is what I mean about the fencing match. You've got to get back, and then you go back in again, and layering it up, playing the warms against the cools. And I know just a few marks can totally change things. Yeah, I think I'll leave it at that. I think you've had enough of me tonight. Now is your question time then, yeah? Well, we're going to have a go at this rather pleasant woodland scene that I've done a composite of now from the Dales, and 3 pheasants that I took when photographing up there. Rather seasonal pictures that we're going to do at the moment. And I'm going to use my acrylics to start off with, and also rollers, and then work into brushes as well. And these little rollers, which come quite cheaply, you can get in different sizes, be very handy for doing some of the background effects in acrylics. These lovely soft pastel shades we're going to have behind the trees. I'm going to use my normal acrylic set, filberts, nylon, and a little bit of sponge there in case I need it as well, you see. Well, I'm going to mix my colours first with a brush. In this case I want these lighter colours here, so I'm going to start with a quite light pink, to a bit of white, plenty of water. So I'm fairly thin paint at the moment, fairly transparent. Little touch of my pink, a wee touch of yellow into that just to get things going. More white, a little more pink. That should do it nicely, and let's see what we can get with that. And we'll just start building up behind here. Can't see the colour much at the moment because of the white of the canvas. But it is coming in behind here. I'll add a little light blue into that later. But at the moment, you can just see it going very thinly over the canvas, over the drawing, right through to here. So backgrounds at first. Mix it more when I need it. Lovely soft background effects that I'm going to need. And I can still see my drawing through it, you see. This is the beauty. Remember that we can put then oils over acrylics, but we can't put the acrylics over the oils. Or we shouldn't, because it's liable to lift afterwards. I'm going to actually cover most of this with this light colour at first, and I'm going to gradually come into it then. And blend the colours even with the sponge. This isn't for speed as much as it's for effect, because I do want to get some beautiful soft pastel shades and effects back here. Okay, now I'm going to gradually add blues to that, the broken colour, so we'll let that come all the way through there. I want to gradually get a bit stronger with these colours. A little bit more pink in there again, so get more and more subtle. Let's keep adding our colours, building it up to overlay almost in a broken colour technique. These colours one across each other here. Look at this beautiful soft background colour. Now I'll start to add my more golden warms. So I'll come in with some yellow ochre now. Gradually coming warm as it comes into the foreground. So these warms now just starting to show, which will push back those lovely soft colours I've done earlier. We can use ordinary sponges to get a lot of this texture. This is to get the much softer background effects before I start on my, which I'm going to be doing soon, slightly more textural sponge work. So I think I've just about got my background in there now. Just going to add a little more of the yellow. We've got these various textures of sponges that we can try and use to get the leaf textures as we come forward. But before I do that, I should put a few more highlights in and then paint in some of the branches in the background, because these layers are coming over. Right, it's time to start working on the branches and twigs now, so I'm going to use this rigger and this fine round to start painting in all the little trees and twigs in the background. Start by mixing my dark. In this case I'm going to want quite a deep blue, so I'm going to take a little bit of Prussian blue, a touch of black, some ultramarine. I don't normally use black, but as I'm working with acrylics here, and they're going to go a bit softer anyway, I think they'll be ideal for this. I've still got some of my marks in from the drawing, so I can just see where I'm going in places. Consistency of paint, as I say, is quite important. We've got to have paint that's not too thick or it won't go on, not too thin, but you can see through it. So that's established our little branches. Now again it's back to texture. But before we do the texture, I need to come into some of the slightly lighter areas of these. Trees. So I'm going to take a little bit of cerulean, a little bit of ultramarine, a wee touch of the pink, the rose. Just find some of the cooler edges of these trees that are coming around here. They're not just black. I want to, while this is drying, I want to paint out lots of this white. So I'll take some burnt sienna and we'll simply get in here and coat this. Burnt sienna and blue I think we'll use on this. It's a nice dark, that's right. We'll get in and coat this whole thing with a coat of this colour just to get rid of the white. And I can use oils for that or whatever, but the thing is to get rid of this distraction of this white canvas. And the same with the pheasants. Let's give them a coat of colour. Nothing too strong, just a thin glaze of yellow ochre and a little sienna just to remove the white at the moment, and we can paint over them later, and you can still see the pencil marks just showing through. Now we're going to go back to our textural work and start using a bit of sponge to start putting back in these leaves up here and so on. I'm going to make up a nice yellow-green. Of course there are various brushes for special effects as well. Here for instance you can see a brush which has a very rough texture at the end. Not one you'd be able to paint a fine line with at all, but these specialist brushes, this one in particular, great for things like these ferns where it's going to give me a fairy effect. Well spread out first, we get a good bashing. You've found this with hakes as well, that new hakes are not much good, but a nice battered old hake is far more useful than a more smart one that just gives a blob of paint. If we make a mistake and put a bit too much of something on, we can go back over with the darks afterwards, there's no problem. Even into the blues. I need to go back to sponges again. So we're still sponging, try a different sponge this time. Put a bit more yellow in. Lots of building up, so it looks like we've done tons and tons of detail. I suppose in a way we have, but not having to paint every individual mark in. Now, a lot more golden gold, so we'll take some yellow ochre again, a bit of white. We've got to start doing distinctive stuff actually on the pathway too. Start building this up with textures for the leaves in the background. Not worrying too much about going over the facets there because we're going to come back in detail on those later. You can see how it's gradually drawing out layers of leaves forward into the painting. Go on mixing colour after colour, finding them gradually, putting them in these blue greys and warms, all these different beautiful colours in the background here. And before I finish this evening, let it dry off, I'll just put a little bit more of the light yellows and green on. I just want to show you just how lovely that can look. So I'm going to make a little bit of cream with my lemon yellow and add a touch of viridian to it. And let's just see, when we do get some of that lighter green on, how effective it's going to be. There you see. It's going to look lovely. Just bring a few of those stronger greens, just a little bit into there, because this is the closer sunlight, and what we want to do is get this feeling of receding light. Lighter shapes here. Catch the sunlight coming through. It'll be happening into some of this as well. That's almost enough for tonight because the light's getting very low here and I can hardly see what I'm doing. Well, since we last worked on this, I put in a lot more details, the texturing, and I've repainted some of the brushes on top because they were lost with the texture going over. And I've just started now to put in some of these grasses and textures. This brush is very useful for that because this is one of those special effects brushes which you see breaks up into little fine furry bits. This is great for the moss, and now I'm going to go back to my little filbert and we'll start painting in these leaves. I'm still using the acrylics and I shall paint the pheasants after the leaves, but I'm going to have to go back into this with oils because I want a lot stronger colours, and although the acrylics are lovely, they do not quite ever give the vibrance of the oils. I'll start mixing up the orangey browns for the leaves. Start with some yellow ochre, a little touch of burnt sienna, and use it as a pure colour at first. If the colour's on my brush and I see it somewhere else, for instance in the pheasants, then I'm going to use that colour, because wherever you make a colour and see it, then use it again rather than have to mix it up while you're at it. And I need the underpainting of these pheasant feathers to go on before I think about any oils even. Quite a few of these colours are going to be coming down into the leaves as well, so it's as well to establish this now and find some of these so that I know what I'm going to be using later as well. And that helps us to establish which colour is right one to another. Again, by using an impressionist or slightly pointillist style. And making the textures actually recreate the bird. I'm using mauve at the moment, or purple. As you see, so far I've managed to get away with using actually just the one brush. Surprising what we can get done just with a filbert, which is a lovely brush. This white I want taking down a fraction later, just to again establish the colours at the moment. Right, and back to our leaves. Gradually getting lighter and lighter with my little bits of leaf that are reflecting light, watching carefully as to whether they're warm or cool, browns or purples. See, we're well on with the painting this morning, and so far I've worked only with acrylics, and I want to brighten up this a bit more later, but I just need to carry on a bit more with the acrylics before I finish. This bird's looking rather flat at the moment, and we've got more ferns and things to do in the distance, and also a few more blues to put in as well. I'm going to use my filbert again. And we'll just start looking at some of these bluer marks around here, so a little bit of cerulean blue, a wee touch of the green just to bring it back a bit, and let's start looking at some of these slightly bluer, cooler turquoise greens in here, which will make the warm greens look even warmer, and that's what we're playing with. Rough against smooth, light against dark, cool against warm, always these things going on and playing one colour against another, which will bring out also these pheasants, because the coolness of these leaves, the green is the opposite to the red, as Constable used in his paintings. You will nearly always notice in Constable's paintings somewhere a little red figure, and the reason for that has always been that he wants to play the opposite in the colour circle, a complementary colour of red against the green, as I do in my beach scenes when I play the purple against the yellow for shadows. So we'll bring this cool all the way down, surprising where it gets to. You don't think it's in the leaves. People tend to, especially amateurs, tend to paint green grass, blue sky, brown soil, but it isn't like that. Little bits of colour going on in these. I've got to find some of them in the rocks and things there as well to do. If you're painting a picture, everything should be of the same way normally. I'm not saying there aren't exceptions to the rules, as there are in almost everything, but if you suddenly start painting something quite differently, it will stand out like a sore thumb. We could finish the whole painting in the acrylics if it came to it, but I think it might be nice just to use some of the strength of the oils coming into this. So let's do that now then, with a very fine brush, especially on the birds. We'll move on to some of the slightly stronger colours with the oils, just to bring it out. So we'll close up our little homemade stay wet palette, put a little bit more water back in just for the moment so that it just stays wet, just like that. Then those paints will stay like that for weeks. And we'll change our brushes over as well and bring on the oils. Little terps, white spirit. And a different set of brushes. Actually we shan't need all that many brushes. I shall only need fairly fine brushes for this job. Right, we'll do some brush work and we'll do some sponging as well. Let's look at these pheasants at first, and we'll just look at one or two of the lighter colours that we want to just paint details over. Little areas here of very light cream that had disappeared. So we'll take a little bit of white, tiny touch of chrome yellow. I'm just going to take that down a tab with some yellow ochre, because this is our final, and I really do want to make this quite a representational piece. So you can really see what I'm doing. Let's zoom in on these birds, and we'll just use this very small brush to tickle in these little half moon shaped feathers. And this paint hopefully is not going to sink like the acrylic has been doing, because it's the oils. It's a stronger pigment altogether. It'll just pick out the bird, you see. Wherever it's lighter as well up here, we'll use a little bit more of it up here as well. Right, now change colour, and we're going to go to cadmium orange, deep one at the moment. We'll just use that pure, Let's see if we can bring out the lovely golden feathers here a little bit more. With this being a lot more orange, it will make the leaves behind seem less brown and garish and more subtle. Although we might actually need some of this colour in those leaves, I can see that now. I know I'm doing it, I can see quite a few oranges coming in these leaves here which need brightening up from the sunlight. So we'll bring in these oils wherever we need them. Take a bit of cadmium red now. A bit of red down here. Nice bright pheasant. And a little bit more around his eye perhaps as well. Right down to a cooler red. Bit more, slight bit of purple now. Really want to feel for these. And we've got to start looking at the these lovely blues that I did earlier with the acrylics have sunk. So I'm going to bring out those colours again with a bit of oil. So some cobalt, a little bit of cerulean now. Really make that pheasant's head shine. My colours on my brush, some of those blues are coming in down here amongst the oranges. Look at that vibrance of colour we can get. Now those colours are only going to show if they have the dark against them. So let's take some Prussian blue. So a very dark blue. And there's little spots of dark that are in the feathers that we need now to make these lights stand out against it. Now you see the wonderful effect we can get with the oils, which are just that bit brighter than these acrylics. And with a little bit of brown with that, because that dark wants warming up a fraction here. We'll move on down to the one below. I'm still using our small brush. We'll take some of the cadmium orange again. Don't want to overdo it because, say, it would look out of place and it would make the birds look as if they're stuck on. Deep. Some cadmium red now. But these stronger colours I'm hoping will just pull it out. Make the bird almost become three-dimensional. Let's move across to the other pheasant. I don't think he's too far out. We'll put a little bit more cobalt just into the blue there for a start. Gives a bit more gleam. I think that's the pheasants about as far as I want to go with them. Now I need to look at the greens and the textures also in the leaves where I want to be a bit stronger. You can see the richness that we're getting in control now. Let's start looking at the ferns here a bit. I'm going to take some yellow green, some bright green, a little bit of white, and really see how much stronger I can bring up some of these greens. Got to have just the right consistency, so I've got just the amount of terps that I require. And I think you'd be surprised just how bright we can make these, how we can get the highlights going on these now, look. And it'll make things really start to pull together. Little bits of fern and which the acrylics were very nice, but they were sinking a bit too much. And these paints, oils, just give that bit more vibrance. Still working on these various ferns, the yellow greens and so on. I want to start getting sunlight coming through these ferns. On the top left we have these very strong leaves, and now if I put them in with the oils, you see just how much stronger they could actually be than they were, or than they are. Let's really give that some welly. Get these autumn colours going. See how much more vibrant, how much stronger it really is then. And the light sparkling down through these trees. And these stronger greens are pushing the other back, you see. Right, I think it's time now to start looking back at the leaves. A little flat-ended brush for this. And mix up some burnt sienna and some yellow ochre, because this time with the oils it's going to be a lot stronger. Well, let's just try that pure first of all. You can see the difference in strength already. I'm going to take some of that with a little bit of white, make a much lighter red. I think I need to go a bit warmer still, so I'm going to take a bit of cadmium red and orange and bring that into it, especially here in the foreground, which will also link, I think, with the pheasant. I'm hoping it will. There we are, look. And it'll bring the pheasant out and forward because the colours will relate to it. I don't think we're that far off completing this painting, because otherwise we could go on forever. Just playing with colours backwards and forwards now to just try and get this right. Not easy. And I reckon that puts us about there. Well, this time we're going to paint this rather nice scene. Rather than a composite of the swans over the marshes at Saltfleet. And you see I've got a black prime canvas here, and we're going to work directly a la primer with the oil paints straight onto it. See my palette here. I've got a couple of oval brushes, I've got a couple of fill bits and a round and a smaller round as well, just for doing some detail work. We should be able to build up with those brushes at the beginning anyway. So I'll take a big brush to start with, just get it working. Put these brushes to one side for later. And the first thing I want to do is to start to make the background sky here. So I'm going to start with this very light turquoise blue. And for that I'm going to want to start with white. Always mix your light colour first. So if we're going to have a light colour, we mix the white and then a colour into it. Or otherwise, if you do it the other way around, you'll end up with a gallon of colour, and that's not something you want. Just gradually building up. So a little bit of terps, nothing much, just to get it working, get the brush going as well. And then actually I'm going to put a little bit of yellow into that at first, because the sky lower down here is quite turquoise. So a little bit of cream, and then into that a wee touch of the emerald, and then into that a wee touch of my cerulean to give me a very green-blue start to my sky. And a little bit more of the lemon yellow, a bit more white. It's going to be against the white of the swan, so I can't make it too dark, or I won't see the white of the swan later on. That's about right now, I think, for that first colour, which is going to go on just here. So that, in this situation here, is just there. There's the bit of sky coming in here, pink coming through there, so a nice light yellowy greeny turquoise plaster it over there. Start to work my way up behind here. Now as I come up behind there, it's going to get darker. In other words, more colour to it. And I say darker, so a bit more blue into that and a little bit more of the green, just to make it a bit stronger in colour. I still want a very luminous background to my sky here. Coming right up around the swan's neck. I'm going to paint slightly over my lines because when I come back with the swan, I'm going to be cutting into it. Now I'll start to add more cerulean and blending through as we get darker with the blue and smokier. Now a little bit of cobalt blue into that. To go a bit darker up here still, just feather those in. Okay, I've painted in the lighter blues and the turquoises of the sky. Now it's time to move on to the clouds. And I want to make a slightly purpley grey for that, so I'm going to take a little bit of my purple. Just test it out. Yes, that's a nice purple mix just to have as another colour. Because I'm going to work one colour into another a little bit here. And feathering it in. And feathering is what I'm doing with the brush at the moment. It's just tickling the tip of the brush into the paintwork. And I'm going to need, of course, some of these same colours coming into the water because it's going to be reflecting it, isn't it? Colour grey going along there in a moment. I don't want too much of this dark canvas showing through either. And the soft tones come right up into the sky here. And these warmer colours, being warmer, will jump forward slightly anyway. And you can see the effect is just starting to show now. And we've lost most of the black except for where we wanted on the birds at the minute, just to know where things were. More ultramarine blue and burnt umber. To go a lot darker, and by the use of brushwork we should be able to get the very soft effect of these fluffy clouds. You can see how we're doing here. Now grey is going along this darker bit. I take a slightly smaller brush and start to work in some of the slightly more warmer colours. And we want to start making these pinks and warms. Again, we're going to work from our mid-tones up towards our lightest. So let's make the pink first. And it's a slightly orangey pink. So we'll take white first as usual. A little touch of cadmium orange, don't need much. Doesn't need much to tint these colours at all. And a wee touch of cadmium red. Don't want to make it too red though, I shall add a little bit of mauve into it in just a minute. Right, let's try some of that subtly coming into here, under the wing of the swan. You can see the lovely effect we're going to get. Match the light. And the clouds coming in down below. I'll make it a bit stronger in a minute there. Little strokes, gradually building it up. Now we come to the much lighter areas where we just want a touch of the cadmium orange. It's almost white. A wee touch of cream there, I think, as well. It's the smallest touch of chrome into the white rather than the lemon yellow. We'll just add a bit more sunshine to this cloud just there by putting in some of that cream. Go. So that's the sky almost done. Might work a little bit more later on when we get the dark to the birds, and the sky will make more sense. Need to come down to the water next, and we're going to be using similar colours to the ones we used before. So we'll take some of the purple blues that we'll be using. Just start to. That's a very cool blue, that one. It'll be coming in more across here. Look at where the light is just shining across the water. I'll be using that the same sort of colour we had here earlier. Look, a slightly greeny blue, a little touch of the cerulean. So I just tested it there to see if it was as close as I need to the colour I've been using in the sky. There are patches of it right up to these ducks. All these darks out at the moment will come back and put in the reeds again. Beautiful, rich, deep purple, which remember the sky isn't the same sky as is on the photograph, so that reflection isn't of this sky. So I've got to do some adjustments, even though I do love that deep purple down there, which I'm going to actually whip in now. And let's really get a lovely deep blue going down here, which is a beautiful colour. So I've used some ultramarine and a little touch of purple to give me that really deep, rich. We'll go even more purple as we come down into it, right down to the bottom of the canvas, just to get rid of this black at the moment and give me a base to paint into. A lot of vertical strokes mixed in with the horizontal in water. Get the reflections, let's get the depth of this water first, and then we'll get the surface reflections later on. Drag the paint backwards and forwards across itself and then back again, and gradually get these, the feeling of the surface of the water. Warmer colours, a little bit of alizarin crimson now. So what we can do with that coming into this, start to link in these warmer tones and reflections that are coming through the surface, sort of rippling across. Well, unfortunately the film on the main last part painting the swans disappeared, and the camera needed cleaning. I guess it's the first time it's ever happened. So what I'm about to do now is to paint these birds, and I'm going to try and show parts of that on the face camera, on the glasses camera for you, but I'll just go back into what I did. Now the three swans in the sky were painted by first painting some of the darks in, then the mid-tones, that's all these greys and light blues. Then I worked up the warm colours and finally put on the very light creams and whites. The cream is made of white and a little lemon yellow. The dark again is cobalt. The dark again is Prussian blue and a bit of burnt umber. And I've actually got that a bit darker there again too. A little bit light still, just there, a little bit darker down that bit. That's better. And once we've got the dark tones and the medium tones painted, then I put the light tones in at the very end. Same here, where you can see the dark tones are painted in, and the medium tones, and then finally the pinks and the very light parts. Same with this one, where we've painted the dark in, then the medium tones, and then the lights at the end. Coming down to these two swans here, where I've already got the darks in, re-established some more of them, put in the mid-tones of the grey blues and the pinks, then re-established the darks, put in the oranges of the beaks, cadmium orange and a bit of cadmium red. The dark again is Prussian blue and burnt umber, and the pinks are white, a little touch of cadmium red and cadmium orange into the white to make the pink, and then just blended that gradually in, the white and a little tiny piece of lemon yellow, and again a little bit of very light blue at the end to bring out those colours. And that gave us the swans. Finally the three ducks over here, where I just used that one dark colour of the Prussian blue and the burnt umber, and then cut in around them afterwards just to get the shapes back a bit, but we'll tidy all of this up later. Time now to work in the reflections a bit more. We'll come back with the medium brush and mix some of the lighter colours, the pinks, to come down into here. You already have some of them on the palette. So let's just start bringing those into the water just a little. They're reflecting down below here. With the warms as well, just to get the feeling of reflections of clouds above. And the rest we can do by putting these lights and darks later on. The next thing what to come down back onto is these swans here now. Get those finished off. I'll go back to my fine brush again. And let's work on them a little bit. Well, again, we've got some nice cool. Let's start with the beak, the dark Prussian blue. And a little touch of brown, just to give it a touch of warmth. And we'll look at his face. So, right. And at the very tip of the beak, we'll do one in a minute, but let's look at the orange of the beak here now. Let's start with the lighter of the two colours, the slightly more cadmium orange. A little touch of red. Let's see if we've got the right sort of colour there. Yes, not far off. It's a little bit light. So into the beak, round, just to get the feeling of the shape of the beak first of all. Then we'll take some stronger red. Mixing it fairly thinly at the moment. Don't want it too strong. Just coming into that, gradually building it up. Just find the end of his beak here now. There, down the back of the head, all the way down the back of the neck, just fluffing down just a little bit. And then our swan suddenly appears. So we've got one swan done, and you'll need a little bit of light blue as well, I think. Not just the cream, the light blue is also going to give us a certain coolness to the body in places. And we've got light coming down the side of the neck here, so I'm going to have to tidy up in a minute, tidy up this water around it. So we've got these ducks here now, which are across there. Same here, get the body of the bird. The head is low. And this one up here at the back, right to the back of the duck. Reflection of his head coming down there. And then here, a little bit of a beak. So we've got our birds in and the basic sky and the base of the water. Now I just want to make the sky a little bit pinker in places, a little bit more pinky purple. So we'll take a bit more of the, this time, a bit of rose this time, and add it to the white. Look at the lovely colours we start to get. So that we play those warmer pinks against the cooler pinks. That's just what's happening here now. We've just finished adding these slightly more pinker pinks, these rose pinks, into the painting to play against the more orangey pinks and make them seem more orange. So you don't add more of one colour necessarily to make something seem stronger. You can add something that's going to complement it or bring it out. We're going to be painting these darks on first and then the lights afterwards on top of that. So the dark, very similar to the bird, is going to be made of Prussian blue and some brown. A little bit of purple into that because up here, and I'm going to use the brush quite delicately just to stipple little bits on to make the feeling of these marshland plants. So using the end of the brush that's slightly broken, we'll carefully paint in these areas, and I'm just going to do a little bit on this and virtually finish it so that you can see what I'll be doing over the whole thing gradually. So just gradually tickling in these reeds. Remember that they're going to reflect as well, so whatever we have here is happening just below them too. So if I put a line or something in here, it has to come in below here as well. Just using the broken bristles of the brush. Gradually get the feeling of this, of these bits of plant. Some of those are slightly darker than the shadow that is cast by the swan. A little bit warmer into that. Take a little bit more purple and just a little bit of alizarin crimson into there now. And then you can come back onto that with the sunlight catching the highlights. For instance, there are little bits of green. You could use a sponge technique for this, but I think my brush is going to be adequate. After that, this lovely golden colour. So I'll take some yellow ochre and some white. Cadmium orange by any means, but just catch this sunlight. And you can see how I'm going to gradually build up the entire marsh in this way now. Quite time consuming, but it'll be worth it. See, I've built up my golds and yellows. I'm just starting to build up some of the warmer reds and pinks, which will be reflecting that sunlight from the sky onto these marsh plants. A lot more colour in these things very often than you realise until you actually get down to painting them. This slight haziness of warmth glowing through here in the background. I'm moving through to a bit more purple in it, cooling it down a bit. Looking at the deeper colours and mauves that are reflecting with the sunlight into these birds. And it's by playing these colours, warm against cools, roughs against smooths, light against darks, that we're going to achieve what we're after here. And I'm going to go down to a smallest brush and just tickle in some of the very light highlights of the marsh, weeds, with a quite strong yellow, little bits of colour and stuff that just hit the water's edge and are important to the water surface, give us this feeling of transparency. Right, we'll let that dry and have a little think on it. Okay, so we're on the closing stages of this now. Coming down to a small brush again. But it's now time to work on the finer details like the swan. So I've just worked around the bird. Now I just want to bring up these outside tints just a bit more. A little bit more pink just down the back here. So that sunlight comes around. And the feathers fluff out there just a bit under the leg. Down the inside here as well. Got to paint quite finely now. And some of that red is also coming to the foreground. And these bits of weed as well, so while I've got the colour on my brush, we'll just tart those up a little bit and this will just bring things out a tiny amount. Didn't make it stand out too much, but just needed to be a fraction darker there. As indeed it does, I think, just here a little bit. Now I want to start working on some of these blues in the background and just bring out the water, the blues and pinks, bring out the water a little bit more again. So some lovely textures, bits of light shining through in the reeds here, which you've lost a bit because it's going a bit dead. So we'll just get some of this lighter blue and come back in there with this. Get these lovely bits of light reflecting the background there. We can use the brush to dry brush and drag it over the surface a little bit, just to give these reflections down into here. Through as well, not just one way, through and across, and with these little strokes and dots and dashes we get the feeling of these lights reflecting in the shimmering evening light. So a lot of work building it up, but all very worthwhile, as you can see now, I think, because now all of this effort that I've been putting in is starting to make sense. We're at it now, we've got it on our brush. I want to just lighten up a few of the other little bits. To come through there, though. I would say that that painting is about as far as I'm going to take it. Well, I think there we go.
Are we in there? We have to go and get a shot of the train first.
Do the rest of the trip, yeah.
Last year. No, but he was restoring the canal balls and sailing, vaulting. Oh, it's the second one. Canal was central. Well, by profession, he's a lorry mechanic. He could have done with something else, couldn't he? This kid took us to Coldstone Cut.
Unless
told you about that one. I'm getting the first goal.
Now with this painting, we've got the wonderful little steam train here that I've made a composite of. I've taken this section and a few more pieces to put together to make what I want, for making an exciting little picture of this little tank engine coming in that we had this wonderful trip of we've just seen. So let's see if we can make a quite exciting picture painting in oils fairly rapidly, but we're going to build up in layers. We're going to build up the undercoats first and then build up the details and textures over the top. Right, I've drawn out the basic drawing here, ready to go, and we'll be using my usual set of paints. Oil paints here, I've got one old plastic palette. I clean this occasionally with some paint stripper, a little bit of terps, just a few brushes just to build up my base coats, and a set of oils over that with nearly all the colours I could possibly need. What I want to do first is block in these undercolours. The greys will be fairly easy to do later, but I need to get the basics of the train in and paint out all the white as much as possible just to get the base colours to get the details over, because this wants to be a fairly illustrative painting. So I need to paint in most of the main colours that are underlying these in sections, a little bit like painting by numbers in a way. I'm going to take a fairly small brush, a filbert at the moment, and we'll just start to make these various colours. Now this shiny tank top here is reflecting the greys of the sky a bit, so we'll have to understand what colour that's going to be before we can even paint that. Then we've got these very dull green greys here working into the blues. Now they're not easy to make, some of these colours. They're not just bright greens by any means. We will take a little touch of Viridian and a wee bit of yellow ochre, just to give myself a fairly strong green to start with. Into that I'm going to put a little bit of cobalt blue just to find my way, make it a bit bluer, and we're getting fairly near to it now, as you can see there. Let's just place a bit of that on there and try it out. Yes, that's not far out, look. So by experience we'll soon get to learn what colours will help to make what. What I want to do is get a nice even coating onto this back of this tank engine to get rid of all of the white. There'll be slight variations in colour, and I'm going to leave odd little bits here and there just showing where I know more details got to go, because I don't want to paint out all my drawing at the moment. It'd be rather silly to do all this lovely drawing and then just waste it, wouldn't it? Right down the side of that tank engine. Don't need too sharp a line at the moment, but I will gradually tidy this up as I go along. All I want to do at the moment is get rid of the whites and establish these main body colours. There's not a lot of difference coming across here. Need a fair bit of paint, so I'm going to have to mix up quite a bit. So Viridian, yellow ochre to make it a bit more yellow, and a wee touch of cobalt blue to bring it back into this sort of deep bluey green, and cover the surface of the canvas. A bit more blue in that case. In fact, that more yellowy green is going on this side, so I will bring, while I've got it on my brush, I'll bring that in there, right down to here. Just a slightly more yellowy green coming down there. There's an awful lot of detail to do in this painting. It's going to take quite a while. It could be done as an impressionist work, but we'll get the looser work done later. I want to concentrate on the details here at first. So block in the background and then concentrate into the details. Now let's get the bit more blue into that, a bit more cobalt blue, the background here of the engine around that lamp, that quite light creamy lamp, because it won't be pure white because of light shining on it from the sky. So we'll cut into the shape just slightly. Don't try and leave a halo around things, do cut into them so that when you go to paint the actual thing it works over the other paint. Right, there's our slightly lighter green coming down here. I'll get it a bit more even. It might even need 2 coats. I do want a fairly realistic and photographic effect. So there we go. Then that same bluey green coming down here. Right down and through. All the way along there, in fact. Up here. So if you want to try painting this, you're always welcome to use my designs if you're an amateur and you just want to learn to paint and enjoy. You can use my photographs or my paintings and copy them by any means, or use them to paint from and change into your own. I'm not jealous in that way, just as long as they aren't used commercially, because I have job enough selling them. What are you doing, dog? Checking out my paint, stop it. Now up here, this bit's much bluer. I'm going to take a little bit of cerulean blue and add into that. That might seem a very strong blue to you. Look at the difference it makes. It's a beautiful blue, look. Added into that green. Not the colour you'd expect, but I'm used to really looking for colours. Right up into them, put a shadow in there in a moment. Curve that goes on through to the edge here. Into there, and that comes right the way through here, in fact down into here. I'm going to leave a very slight line there because I know that there's some bars coming across there shortly, and there we see the slight subtlety and difference in those 3 different bluey greens. That blue come into this bit as well. Look at these subtleties and changes of colours. Now, that same blue is coming in a line down here, slightly shiny, slightly lighter blue in fact, will be slightly lighter in a moment. Just want to bring it down here first of all. We get the shininess, the effect of this tank engine being round now by painting these reflections as they come downward. Now I'm going to add some white to that and go to quite a light bluey green just here, places, up into the tank itself here. Before I go to pinky greys from the sky reflecting on here. There we go, and just away bottom of that there, and a little bit of that light blue green coming along the decking of the edge of the train here, engine, even down this edge a fraction. You see these colours are on your brush, use them. And around the edge there too. Darker green I want up here, let's go back to that. So wash my brush. I've got some cloth nearby to rub it on, to clean it off. And I want to go to a much deeper blue-green, so I'm going to take some Prussian now. A bit of Prussian into that same green that I was working before. Just come up and around here, and look how much darker that is. And it's by painting the opposites together, it's by painting warms next to darks, cools next to warms, roughs next to smooths, that we're going to get the colours working as they should individually. On their own, just painted on, they won't work, but painted relevant one to another. So the right shapes, painted in the right places, with the right colours and tones relevant one to another will gradually make a painting come out like a jigsaw. See how we're getting that here? Well, we've got these dark colours going. Let's take some more of that and a bit of ultramarine blue and make a very dark, and I'm going to add a little bit of warm to it this time. I'm going to take a little bit of burnt umber and add that to my very deep blue, add a little bit of the green and paint this very dark colour in here. So we don't need a black. I shan't be using black at all in this painting. Don't need it. All the way down there. That curve, that edge. We can make our blacks, we can make our darks by using very deep blues and browns. Down here, some of that dark a little bit more shaded into that bit there. So it comes around, right down to hit this edge here, up into there. Bit of reflection then. Tiny touch of taps into that paint just to get it flowing a bit better. And we'll look at painting in later. I've got some other photographs of the inside of the engine. We'll look at putting more detail in there, the leg of the engineer and the fire as well. But at the moment let's just get base colours in and get this covered up. Right, we've got that. A little bit darker still up this edge. So that gradually comes down in shadow and in arc. Now, top of the funnel is very dark like that. Not an easy brush to use. This one's getting a little bit ropey now. I might have to change brushes soon and get a slightly neater brush. I've been scrubbing away with this one. You tend to just keep using the same old brushes. They become favourites if you like. Let's bring that funnel down into there and just blend it in. A little bit darker on that edge there as well. A little bit of reflection there of the green. Take some of that green, deeper green, and just put it in there. But now we need this darker colour here, and we come down one tone. And it's slightly yellow. I'm going to take a little bit more of the yellow ochre again and just add that into that look. Straight into the paint, mix it on the canvas in this case. All the way along there, down to the, I believe where that red sign is on the edge of the engine. So that was a little bit more yellow just coming down to there. The brush, go back to that lighter blue, a little bit more cerulean in the green, and we just come back to this area here where I want a bit more of that cerulean blue reflecting in there. It's often the greens have a great variety in them, and cerulean is quite a turquoise green. So a turquoise blue, it's almost into the greens being turquoise. Right, down along there, that's reflected that. Now let's go right down to those darks again. Our ultramarine and burnt umber. Right into here. The whole of this bit, what's painting in dark. So like painting by numbers, we'll block in these shapes first and then come back in with smaller brushes and gradually build up the details. And that'll give these paints time to dry as well, because I need to be able to paint details over the top. So these first layers are going to have to dry off a bit before I can work over them. I could work very heavy paint, but I don't want to be too heavy in this case. I just want to gradually build up my effects. Won't put in the details of all the pipe work and everything yet. Let's just get basics in. A little bit thin that, we'll take a bit more paint. We don't want to get too much terps. Very dark, right down to in between the railway lines here. This is the idea, is to get rid of this white canvas as soon as we can. We're starting to establish where things are now. Now, as I was saying up here about the sky, there are going to be several greys I'm going to mix for the sky. One of them is going to be alizarin crimson and viridian green, which does give out a wonderful green grey, obviously. So alizarin crimson and viridian green. I'm going to mix them up now. I have plenty of white to that, because we're going to need that to play against the warmer greys I'm going to make with burnt sienna and ultramarine. Just try a little bit of that grey on there. Here we are, look, that's quite a dark at the moment, but we will be putting quite a lot of this in as it goes on. Oops, don't want that. Flooded too far, too much terps on the brush, sucked it up. But it doesn't matter because I can bring it back later. So this lovely warm greeny grey, which is very effective, as you can see. Now a lot more white into that. Come along the top of the train here before I go cooler with it, just to get my reflection of the sky going straight away. People might have gone straight away for a lighter green, but that isn't the case. If something is shiny, it doesn't always shine the colour that the surface is. It will shine the light that's shining onto it. So in this case it's going to reflect the sky. And we're going to make it a lot lighter yet. We're going to make it a lot creamier. So just to give a base coat. Right, now I'm going to take some cerulean and white and add that into that. To start to link with the lighter blue that we've already done on the side of the train. See the effect we're just starting to get now, reflections around the barrel of this. Now it's got much warmer. I'm going to take a little yellow ochre and white and some of that grey into that, and we'll just bring some of that down there. You see the effect we get by that, because we're going to be using this yellow ochre and white later in the clouds. I want the shininess of this gloss paint. Now, is that colour anywhere else? Well, yes, in fact it's quite dark, but it is actually up here. It's a lot greyer, so I'm going to add a bit more of the umber and this time ultramarine to it to give a darker grey up here. You start to see the difference between these colours, and they won't be different until we see them one against another. Can't just paint a colour in and say that's it, done. Really doesn't work that way. I wish it did. We've got to get them relevant and correct one to another. So a much warmer grey base coat, quite different to that purpley grey there. In fact, I think I might paint the sky in soon, just to get rid of that vast area of white anyway. So I'm going to take a larger brush. I'm going to start with a yellow ochre and white, creamy grey, nice big filbert. Use the same spot I was just using, get a load of white onto my brush. So I've already got some of that grey colour in it. That'll give me a nice, before I even use the yellow ochre, you can start to get a light grey going on in places. Let's get this painted in, shall we? Get the greys going. You can blend one grey into another here. Look at these pencil marks now. Right out there, a little bit bluer in places as well. Scrub out the pencil marks. In some cases just leave them showing through like I am there, so I can see where they are for my drawing later. Don't worry about going over things a little bit at the moment. We're going to bring all this up in detail later. Now, a bit more white and a little touch of the yellow ochre. We'll start to get some more creamy greys going in here. And how many there are, just what a variety there is of them. It's not just one black and white grey by any means at all. Right down to the roof. More white. Take a little bit of cobalt this time. So I want a slightly lighter blue going up into the clouds here. Just as if the sky is just breaking through the steam. Up here. And over here as well. And then we'll turn it back into a grey. We'll add a little bit of burnt sienna to it. Too much. Have I got it anywhere else? Yes, that brown comes down into here. Well, when you've got a colour on your brush, if you make a mistake and you've got a colour that you know is going to be used elsewhere, well, do that. So we get the sooty effect, the smoke and the steam, as well as the sky gently showing through in places. And you can just see the tones, different tones of the blues and the subtle greys playing one against another. And I can smooth this with my finger as well to get the soft smoky effect. We don't have to have little brush strokes everywhere. We can use our fingers to, even bits of cloth or anything to blend and to get the effects we want. It doesn't really matter what subject you're painting, as long as you can get the right colours in the right places and the right shapes, it's going to work. Let this blue sky just gleam through the steam. It gets stronger and stronger, so I'm going to take that alizarin and the green again. I'm going to just strengthen it a little bit. I'm going to take a little bit of the burnt sienna now, and a little bit of the ultramarine, just to strengthen that grey a bit more into here, making it a little bit warmer. And we can put a bit of lighter colour on later when the steam is built up a bit more. But this just gives us our basic glow. Well, I've got that colour on my brush, of course. It's going on in the background as well. So it's got to go through this window here, hasn't it? You see, with this white canvas, it's throwing us out a bit because we're thinking that the grey is very dark. But in fact, once I've painted in mirror going on there. Once I've painted in all of the white, it's going to look a lot darker. It'll make a lot more sense. And that same colour is reflecting down here, all the way along this carriage. That same light grey, which looks quite a mid-grey at the moment, but will go a lot darker once I get the other colours in. And a little bit along here, and certainly up the edge of this carriage roof, which are quite bluey greys. So I'm going to add my cobalt blue to that same grey just now. A little bit of yellow ochre, bring it back again. Tad of the alizarin to make it a bit warmer. Let's see what we get with that. There we go, there's some nice grey. I want some mist into here. Again, with a little lot darker and lighter wherever it needs in spots later. The first thing is to get these colours, just to get this established and make sure that our colours are right. There's no point finishing one part and then think, oh, that's all right, and then you go back later on and find it's totally wrong. You really need to first of all get these colours as near as damn it and check them. The cools coming into the sleepers here. Now that I've established that lot, I got rid of most of the white canvas. Let's get that roof right just there. There we go. I'm going to come back to my small brush again. Look at some of the reds down here, just so I have to establish some of the brighter colours and the yellows and things. Again, just to make a coherence, start pulling it together. The drawing of that still out. That angle isn't too bad, but this one needs to come up a lot more. Right, the red. Don't make it too garish. I think we're going to need, first of all, some cadmium red with a little bit of rose. Bring that down a bit, there we are. So very bright, but it might be alright. You can always tune it down a bit with some glue later. For the moment, let's just get this colour painted in. Trouble with these, a lot of these colours is they're not, unless you paint them with a bit of body colour, a bit of white, they're not very opaque, they tend to be a bit thin. And the same on this piece that I've left white at the moment, so that I could get fairly clean colour in. If I paint over the dark, unless it's completely dry, it's going to lift it slightly, so we want to leave white areas where we want a lighter colour. So you see, this isn't a really bright red. To go a bit brighter, I can do that a bit later on. That's it. A little bit of cadmium orange into that. Get the paint to work. There we are. There's the difference in the different reds and the orange, so we get cleaner, brighter effects of colour. Now, while I've got that on my brush, the top of the buffer here is a lighter orange. Okay, time now to start on some of these other lighter areas. Before I do that, and I've still got some light colours left, we'll just come in some of these areas and finish them off. Again, detail's going to be needed afterwards, but for the moment, let's get the base colours in. Now, this yellow here, not a very bright yellow. We'll use some chrome, which is a warmer yellow. Going to use a bit of body colour with the yellow. I tend to find yellow is a very transparent colour, so I'm going to take it, I'm going to add some white to it, and then a little yellow ochre to bring that down more. Let's see if we get near the colour there. That's more like it. It's sort of orangey yellow, slightly duller than cadmium. And that orangey yellow is going down. Yellow ochre to it, I think. Just a bit more golden down there. That's better. That's a better colour. Now down here it's a much more yellow ochre colour. In fact it's almost pure yellow ochre, but just a fraction. But the thing is, we're gradually getting rid of the white. Talking of greens and yellow ochres, all I'm doing at the moment is just finding the basic colours. I'm not even going into detail. I just want to lose this white and get the base colours sorted out. Sometimes we just stain the canvas so you can see the other colours through underneath. It doesn't matter. Build them up afterwards. It just helps us to still know where the drawing is. These little subtleties of texture, using the bristles of the brush to give me form, letting it just gradually merge down so that we get the illusion of lots of detail rather than actual. You can see we're well on the way to covering the surface. Even our whitest of whites don't have to be that bright yet. So we've covered the white canvas, or just about. That's what we needed to do to be able to see what we're doing. Now it's just a matter of building up the colours much more carefully and more detail. And so we gradually take the looser work and tighten up onto it. And in a painting like this, I'm going to have to paint in almost every little details. But we still have to use the right colours. And make sure that the perspective remains correct as well. So, get our perspective correct on that. As I start to get these details in, things will make more sense. And space starts to appear because we're painting these little bits of shadow and light against dark, rough against smooth end, which we talk about. Now we've got to start putting in some of the lighter highlights. So I'll mix up a cream and a little tiny touch of yellow ochre just to soften it down a bit, because it'll be too cool otherwise. Putting in the white lines, I'm not being absolutely perfect. I'm gradually building this up. Right, I think we need to think about some of the texture down here, and for that I want to use either a very stiff bristly brush or sponge. I'm going to use this old bristly brush at first and just see if we can get some of this texturing going. Now I think we'll start with the darks, so I'll make a bluey grey. Again, we'll use some ultramarine and burnt sienna in this case to start getting some texture going with the brush. Twist the brush as you go along, try not to make penny-yard, try not to make it all look the same. So a sponge will give this effect as well, but just for the moment I want to use this bristle brush to scumble and stipple. So scumbling is rubbing it across, stippling it is pushing it into this texture here. We don't want any marks the same, which look a little bit there, a bit samey, so I've got to be careful. I've got to, gravel, nothing ever looks the same everywhere unless it is in nature and repeated, like a butterfly's wing, but otherwise nothing is going to be quite the same. Again, sure my brain will be after this either. Okay, now we mix up the next lot. I'm going to put a bit more cobalt in with this one. Go towards a bit more blues, a bit more into this. So working up these textures quite nicely. I want to get a little bit more warmth into them now. Can start adding a bit more brown in there. So careful not to get the same marks it's so easy to just use the brush almost as we have there and get exactly the same marks going, which we really don't want to do. We must always try and vary the stippling. So I've got some of the darker colours there now. Let's start to look at some of the lighter. I'm going to add some white to it now and a little yellow ochre just to warm it up to a warm grey. Let's see if we can start to stipple in now the warmer grey here. Maybe even a little touch of cadmium orange. It's rather nice warm grey. Try to make even lighter and yellower yet. A little touch of more yellow into it now. Let's make it a little cream up. We'll raise the stakes yet again. And it's quite strong bits of colour here and there, shining with the sunlight onto this. We'll start to get a little bit of sunlight gleaming in now, I think, if we can. See the difference those worms make so quickly. Suddenly the picture starts to take shape. I want to go to some very light blues. Surprising what a variety of colours there are in something like this gravel. How it glows through the background here. And you see that the picture suddenly starts to come together. So even if you've got an old brush that doesn't seem to have much use left in it at all, it can be very useful. Alright, now back to a little flat, just indicating. Right, now I want to start working with a bit of sponge, seeing what texture we can get with that as well onto here. We need the much lighter colours now, we're trying to get more sunshine across it. So I'm going to make a much lighter pink and orange. Just take some of my brushes to mix it up first, because we don't want to be using a sponge to clog it all up with a colour. Take some chrome yellow and white, maybe a little touch of red, a bit of purple in a minute as well. There we go. Now let's try a little bit of that onto it, and hopefully we'll have a nice texture on the sponge, as you can see there. And if we're lucky, we'll be able to start placing some of that texture into here, get this gravelly look. You can see that we aren't actually a long way off finishing, not really, we're well on the way here now. And I think we need a bit more green looking at it now as well, just coming into these bluey greens coming into these gravels, because we've got green in there already, and it would be better to reflect that back into here a bit more so that it links a bit. Look, I'm not trying to stand out too much, so it'll be a part of the whole picture. See how that pulls it together, and it's something that I don't always think of doing, is putting in colours that you'd never expect but actually are there because they're in colours around it, and we need to link the thing together. Which I think is just what I've just done. We'll use a bit of sponging along there to just get a bit of put in a few darks too. And that's given it a lot more foundation to our base here. Now, we need to do a little more detail on the tracks themselves. Cool reflected lights, even down the banister here, will make a difference to pulling the thing together, making it cooler. There may even be a little bit of this going on over this side, surprisingly enough. touch of this reflecting on top of the engine to really get the feeling of that shininess just there. These last sparkles we're adding. Now I just want to do a bit of work on the engine here. Here we see there's just a black area and his leg sticking out. What I'd like to do is try and use a little bit of this photograph, which is rather a nice one of him actually in there, and just indicate the interior of the cab there. It won't be that easy, but we'll have a little go at it. So here we've got a light. Now we're cheating a bit, but I've got to try and get this as factual as I can, because otherwise there's going to be somebody in the railway engineering scene that will know that I got it wrong. So we'll take some cadmium orange and cadmium red, the obvious colours you'd expect. Get that going round there. And then some pure white and lemon yellow, as clean as we can keep it. Little touch of little bits of that reflecting in there, all these bits of metal and so on. To try and be as realistic to this as we can. I've got the blue on there. There's some other tubes and things that are just showing a little bit more here. I need a fraction of colour. last moment to sit and paint in the gardens. The weather's been so changeable that I haven't been able to get out here, and I've had to take photographs and lost many good chances. I'm going to just take about half an hour to an hour now to try and whip out a quick one of these poppies for fun, just pure pleasure, just as painting should be for me, but I'll let you share it as well. In watercolour, no drawing out, just straight in, nice and loose. But the first thing I need to do is choose a brush, pick up my oval mop and wet all the paints quickly. Haven't been used for a while, so I need to get the paints so that I can just touch them for the colour to come off on the brush. All the way around my palette, preparing the paints, just wetting them down a bit. These are liquid paints, liquid watercolours that have been let to go dry. Then let's work out just where things are going to go. I want the 3 large flowers here, some orange ones there and the blues behind. So lightest colours first, straight in this case I'm going to go straight in with some cobalt violet. Just down the bottom of this, just to find out where the flower is here. Probably about there actually. So very light colours, remember we're painting in watercolours, so light colours first. Yes, paint wetting to wet, so a little bit of the cobalt violet just to... And then there's a slightly yellow colour to it. So I'm going to take some aureolin yellow and just bring that through that pink into the surface. A bit of aureolin yellow and light. Just want the effects of light here in a minute. That's our very, very light colours. Now let's start to work in the slightly stronger ones, the petals around it. Lose some light. Getting stronger as we work them up. And I'm going to have to let it dry a bit. Now it's slightly warmer. In fact, I'm going to go more towards a brown now. I'm going to take my cobalt violet and a little touch of brown and just drop in some of these slightly warmer colours around here. How transparent and how delicate and how lovely they can be. Right, that's got my lightest colours in there now. Let's go for the oranges while that's drying out a bit. Let's go for some of the oranges behind. Let's put a little bit of pink into that though, a little bit of rose. Just a little bit of pink going in. And these petals around. Right, it's got the luminosity. It's beautiful in watercolour. And while I'm at that colour, I can see behind there are some rather nice blue and purple flowers going on. I don't know the names of all my flowers, I'm afraid. Right, these flowers are drying out a little bit now, so I can afford to go back, take a little bit of purple, just drop that in under there, strong. Almost too strong, just drop a bit in it. And then it goes very dark into that too. I need to make it a bit warmer, purple and a bit of burnt sienna. Just drop some very dark colours. Dry off. Oh, while that's going on, we'll go back to these blues, a bit darker in there. Now these lovely oranges of the marigolds. We've got some very light yellows, cool yellows and some very warm ones. So I'm going to come in first of all with the aureolin yellow, which is a sort of greeny, lovely yellow flowers at the top there. Come round the back. So we're going to paint our light colours first, remember, with watercolour. So these are our cool yellows still. And behind there I notice we've got some lupins that are also very pink. And light yellows as well. And down behind there again, some of the lovely blue flowers coming out. Got a slightly harder edge just around that plant. Then we go to the warmer blues. We need some ultramarine going into there. Petal shapes of these flowers. Now it's a bit drier, we're putting the wet over the dry to give harder edges. Right, now let's go back to these yellows. I want some chrome yellow now, which is a warmer yellow. Start dropping in. Start putting a little bit more detail of the flowers in amongst these now. I don't want to go too detailed into this. This whole painting is about an impression and light and the vibrancy of watercolour, so I'm not going to go into great depth of detail, just try and find these lovely light colours. I'll take my aureolin yellow again and start to work in a little bit of aureolin yellow and some cerulean to start to give me a very light green background. And we can use it as a glaze as well, where we've got some shadows. Now we've got to start going, oh, the sun's gone. Now we've got to start going slightly darker into other colours of the spectrum of the greens. Amongst these poppy leaves down here we've got some quite different sorts of, let's get the feeling of these leaves coming at the back here, through some of these plants. We're trying to get the feeling of this very complicated little jungle of various greens going on down here. Now we'll make a much warmer green. We'll take some raw sienna, ultramarine, and drop in much warmer darker greens going on behind there. Really make these flowers stand out. Gradually building it up. That would very quickly because the light is changing and I want to get all the poppies in and painted. Now I want to go from stronger greens, more yellowy greens. I'm really going to plaster on a bit of chrome and viridian to just get these darks, these lovely deep sunny greens going on behind. And then down into there, this really beautiful dark, so indigo, a little touch of the yellow. And really start to get some, make it a bit warmer. Some burnt sienna, bit of red into that, and much warmer brown going on down there. We've almost got a finished painting there, haven't we? I mean, it's nice and light, it's nice and lively. Just pick out a few more darks in. At this stage we can think about what detail we want to do, whether we want a bit more detail in it, whether we want a bit more warmth going on in here. So I'm going to take a little bit more of the warmer colours and just play around with some of the seed heads and colours into this. These warmer browns. And there we are, really. What more do we need? Just a few minutes and a little lively watercolour. Well, there we are, the nice quick lively watercolour for you, just for the sheer pleasure of it. Okay, let's move on now to a little scene behind here. Well, I've got one poppy left. In this composition of my last one is that I want to change the composition. The poppy isn't quite where I want it to be. Is move that poppy to the left and upwards towards those lovely blue delphiniums. And we'll see what we can do, nice and loosely again. This time, my poppy here and the pink delphiniums here. So let's work, because the weather's likely to change, let's work straight into that. And very often with our watercolours we get a much brighter colour by dropping one colour into another than by mixing. So what I want to do here is clean up my aureole yellow first, which has got filthy with the greens from last time. Get a nice clean bright yellow blob for the poppy about here. Still a bit green. So the sort of size I want it first, between the cool and warm reds. So we'll come down to the cooler reds. Lost this watercolour in my opinion, so I'm going to go back to my unison pastels and actually bring those over it as well. Try and bring it back to life. Good girl. Sit down, sit down. Stay there, sit. Good girls. There's good dogs. Okay, we're going to do this rather nice composite of geese flying over the marshes here and my two Labradors, the young pup and the black, just catching the sunlight. Sunrise with some snow, and we're going to do this in acrylic on a 24-30 canvas. And my little sandwich box of acrylics here, make my own stay wet palette. All we do is buy a sandwich box with a lid, put in a layer of kitchen paper and a piece of greaseproof over the top, wet that, and the acrylics will stay wet for weeks. Then just open it up when we want to use it. I keep it in a circular palette next to it just to mix in. You can see my colours here, very basic sets of all I need. And what I'm going to do first in this case is just paint in these dark areas where the birds are, just so I know where they are, not that neatly, just basically. And once I've done that, then I've established those positions. I've already drawn out just the basic positions of the composition, and I'll work then from my medium tones out to lights and darks. So we've got the geese in, and I should paint around them, which is not something I normally do, but in this case, just so I know where they are, and also I want to establish where the Labradors are here. Although I'm going to paint a lot of other dark colours in there later, I just want to know my basic points of composition, I guess. And the same with the lab over here. We just get her in where she is at the moment. And then it's just a matter of putting all the right colours in. While I've got this dark on my brush, I'll just put a dark horizon across here. Establish some of these colours straight away. So I'm using a mixture of Prussian blue and black here. And there we go. We're ready to start painting the sky. Now for this sky, I want to paint the blues in here and gradually work those greys over. And grey, the simplest way to make it has always been a blue and a brown. Here we're going to have very much similar, but I might add a little bit of purple to it, and we've got some warms coming in as well. So we're starting with a fairly cool blue down here and working our way up to warmer. There's quite a lot of turquoise going on around there too. I'm going to use a quite large 1/2 inch filbert again. And I'm going to mix into my white. In other words, I want a light colour. So I'm going to mix my light colour into that. And to start off with, I want a very yellowy blue, very, very light. So a little bit of lemon yellow. Don't want it too green. It is very light. Lemon yellow and a little bit of cerulean blue up here. And let's start with that. Working back through these clouds here. It always seems very dark when I put it on at first like this because the canvas is white, and with a white canvas like this you tend to get the feeling that the colour is too dark against it, but in fact once we establish all of these colours it won't be. I'm going to make a variation of these colours anyway as it goes on. I'll tidy these geese up afterwards. Don't mind if I do cut into them slightly at the moment because it's easy enough to go the dark over the light again later. All I want to do at the moment is remove any halo and any white. Just remember where they are, that's all. As I say, it's all very light at the moment. Right down into here. Beautiful blue colours we're going to gradually blend through and reflecting with the sky. Working over and over again. To paint the blue right through first of all, and then come back afterwards and start adding all the pinks on top. This in some ways is a little bit easier with the oils because they blend for longer, whereas the acrylics of course will dry very quickly, and you've had that, no you can't do it. Quite lovely green tints going on behind these clouds up here that I want to establish, which the greys are going to work over. You don't worry if you go over your geese a bit because we're going to come back and tidy those up anyway. All we want to do is just know where they are. Right, now I've got the underpainting of those blues. I can start to be a little bit more specific about the colours. and where they are a fraction warmer I can start to do that. Because there is a bit warmer going on now. And by changing my brush strokes into different directions as well, I can start to feel my way around these clouds. Even though I'm going to put yellows and oranges and so on here later, I just want to get rid of the white at the moment. Right, now let's start to look at the greys. I'm going to take some ultramarine and a little touch of burnt sienna. Make it a lovely warmish grey that comes in with that there, look. Coming up behind the geese, and just want to tickle it, I want to feather it in here. And I can make it cooler or warmer by adding more of the cool blue, the ultramarine, or the warmer burnt sienna, or even the burnt umber as I was using just now. I'm going to do that in a moment. I'm just feathering and finding my way onto the surface at the moment, just gently finding my way behind the geese. Up here as well, gently coming in. And we're just letting some of that blue glow through as the cloud gets mistier at the edges. This lovely effect of light and atmosphere. It seems quite strong at the moment, but when I put stronger on shortly, it won't seem as heavy. You see, I'm painting over the birds a bit now. Doesn't matter because I'm going to bring it back later. Just subtly and softly bringing those wisps of cloud in here. By subtle changes backwards and forwards between these warms and cools. We're ready to start on some of the pinks and yellows. I don't want it too garish. I think little rose would be fine. It might just be taken down a little bit with some yellow ochre. Don't want it too strong. So a little touch of rose or magenta would do. And a wee touch of either the yellow ochre. I'm going to use chrome yellow at first, maybe a little bit strong, we'll just see. And just subtly come in here, subtly as I dare. Because the white canvas is still there, it still won't look right until I lose all of that. One colour works against another. I'm just scumbling and brushing in this colour at the moment. I'm not using very warm colours yet, we're just using some magenta and a little bit of rose just to find these pinks. Don't want them too flash pink. I make a move back over them with a bit of blue yet, just establishing the warmth of them glowing amongst these clouds. A little bit of lemon yellow on the rose. And then back to the rose again into that. Make it a bit stronger in the pink. Come along here at the bottom. And that's one of the beauties of an opaque paint. I can come back in with lighter colours over the top of the darks, unlike watercolour where you've really got to keep light from the very start. You get the feeling of these mare's tails, these horse tails in the sky. The lighter areas reflecting within here. We want the much stronger, more orangey pinks, so we're going to have to go a little bit more now towards my cadmium reds, I think. Let's see what happens when I start to put a little bit of the warmer orangey reds in, especially down here. See the difference that'll make, because that'll make the cooler reds seem cooler. Try and get these reflected lights, feeling of these warms of cool colours shining up into here. And we'll go to stronger still, going outwards towards the cadmium orange more, so we'll add a little bit of cadmium red to it. Softly. Bit of lemon yellow to cool it down. Got some muck in it there, unfortunately. Now back to the rose again. As we come across here with a slightly warmer. Beautiful colours we can get to play with them. Start playing like Turner did with light. But it's this subtlety of playing between cool and warm colours. Every colour has a cool and a warm to it. Every single colour. So a yellow can be cool, a yellow can be warm. Lemon yellow is cool, and yellow ochre is very warm. I've got to play with these. I'm playing with a very cool warm now, which is more the rose, just to bring out these other the warmer reds a bit more. Not too much, so I'll just take it back a bit. Right, now I want to go back with some of the lighter blues again. Turquoisey greens. Tend to make those up again. We'll just feel some of these lights against the cloud a bit more again. So we can play both ways with this. We can put the darks in, but we can come back and play with a bit of the lights that we're shining through the cloud in places. We'll leave that at that for the moment, and we'll carry on with the water downwards tomorrow. I think we need to get a slightly lighter orange and pink into here. This one's not too bad, but I need to get a slightly more golden light pink going. So we'll get a little touch of the cadmium red this morning. Just see, it may be far too light, I think. A little bit of crimson. That gives me an idea of where direction I'm going. I need to be slightly more orangey, so back to the cadmium red. So the idea is to use these little short feathering brush strokes just to bring the pinks and blend things back in together again a bit here. Let the blue just glow through the... Now straight on down to the base here, and we'll paint in some of these lighter colours that we've already had up here. Some of them are slightly changed slightly in that they're going to be either darker or lighter than the colours above. This first one is fairly yellow turquoise that I want to get onto here. It's quite a light, nice colour. The pinks are going to be reflecting into it, so it's lemon yellow and white, and then adding a little bit of the cerulean blue into it. We don't just paint the strokes, we paint across. We bring them downwards as well into this, so we can blend one colour into another. Go right way around into here. Need to lose this white. And we're going to start adding these warmer blues. Put the right colours in the right places and the right shapes, and hopefully the whole thing will start to come together. A bit more burnt umber into it now. Doesn't matter if we work over the wrong textures at the minute, I just want to establish the tones. Cools that are going on behind here. And all these little stumbles and scuffles start to appear to be something. Using a mixture of burnt sienna and ultramarine now, which is giving me a slightly greenier deep grey. To lay this on and then gently bring it back with a bit of water to blend it in gradually. I'm going to start to add a little bit of purple to it to really get some lovely colours going on back here. Just gently glazing it in at the moment. This will make those cooler colours seem cooler, which is what we're after doing at the moment, is playing one colour against another. A bit of this purple coming up into the clouds again, just to tint it a bit. And by using these different blues now, the ceruleans and the cobalts and the ultramarine and so on, I'm able to play these lovely cools and warms together to get the effects that I want. It's surprising how quickly a picture can come together, as you can see here. Now I need to just get a little bit more of these very light creamy blues up here and get the sparkle of that light shimmering in our eyes as we're walking up there. Now we just need to work on the dogs a little more. I think we've almost finished on here. Just like this to be a little bit lighter up here, this pink. Just get some white and a little touch of rose, and see if I can't soften that just a little bit more. Don't want an awful lot, just needs lightening just a little, I think. Well, it would seem that we need to work on the dogs just a little bit more, because at the moment you could read them as shark's fins on top of the water. Not going to be easy, because it does look like water being shiny on the surface, and the dogs are that particular shape, so I don't want to bring them out too much. We'll just enhance the silhouettes a bit. Then I might want to put a few little bits of grasses and things in the foreground here to make it look a little more like this marsh there. Now, such fine small work, and I really don't want to get too much into detail, although I've already put some in there. That's probably as much as we're going to do. Might just have a little bit more blue. The warmth of the sun, just catching some of these little bits of grasses. Just a few marks against the flats to help the feeling of marsh rather than just water surface.